Let's get through this quickly. So my name is Joel Ola. I'm a senior learning technologist at Amazon. Also a chief tweaking officer, more around making things better, tinkering with things. 24 years or so in the industry, technology, and as learning, design, and a little bit of storytelling. We heard about storytelling before, so I have actually written 2 screenplays. One was really bad, and I made my back fiance to read it, forced it to get feedback, and I don't suggest doing that. If you want to create a long-term relationship with that person, just go ahead and find professionals. We're still married, but I don't recommend. It was tense. Those days were tense. So anyway, back to the presentation, because we're talking about the present and not the past today. So the topic is microlearning prototyping or playtesting. So what we're doing today in this next 10-15 minutes is getting beyond the design part. So let's assume that you have microlearning. Let's assume that you created those things. And then what? What do you do with that? Now, this is going to be a little storytelling, and I need help with that in the chat. And I'm going to keep my eyes on the chat so I can respond to those. But what I'm thinking doing for the next couple of minutes is kind of talking about 3 things: past, present, and future. Sort of how do you rethink the past, or how you used to do things? What are you today in the present, which is the iterating part we just heard about, and then how to tweak the future. So what is and why is it important to do play testing with them, and then what are the tools? So I'm gonna show you 2 things today. One is a high-tech sort of way of play testing, and the other one is something that is simple or low-tech or lower-tech sort of thing. For that, we're going to go back to this town. Let me jump back here so you can see. This is going to be a storytelling from left to right. And if you bear with me all the way to the salon in the bar, I'm going to tell you a joke. It's not going to be as good as Gideon's joke, but it's going to be a joke, like someone walks into a bar sort of joke. So something to look forward to. So let me start with this question, because we need to name this place in the Wild Wild West. So just throw in one word or phrase that you usually use when you want to share how good microlearning is. So let's say Gideon has zero knowledge about microlearning, and you want to share, or you want to convince them to use microlearning. What's one word or phrase that you would use? It's quick, engaging, efficient, brief, fun, simple.
Snackable.
What is that? Snackable?
Snackable.
Oh, snackable. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
like snackable.
Snackable. All right. So a lot of things around how fast thing is and snackable. So we're gonna call this Snackerville. This is gonna be a town called Snackerville. Snackerville mayor has a problem, specifically about the bank. The bank tellers are not performing, and they need training very fast, because there are issues. They have specifically issues with dealing with robbers, so difficult conversations. Sometimes they escalate, that they're not escalating. Sometimes they should look up the right policies, but they don't. They just make up their answers. The checks flying, so they're not doing well. So Nakerville mayor says we need training, and we heard about this micro learning thing. It's fast. We can cut training down half. And who's the best person to run this is the sheriff, obviously, because he's good at doing things quickly, because that's how he's a sheriff, because everybody else is dead. And so we decided to do this, brings up the sheriff and say, hey, I heard this less content, more impact. Let's do microlearning. Sheriff comes in, great. They build a microlearning, cut everything in half, throw out all the microlearning to people. They went through the microlearning, nothing changes. So here's the problem. We heard this about, and I saw the chat that you mentioned efficiency. If I cut training time half, is that solving for efficiency, effectiveness, or both? What do you think? So cutting time half so I don't waste half of my time, is that efficiency, effectiveness, or both? So it looks like we have both. We have no, we have efficiency. voting, we have efficiency. Yeah. So if I just focus on the speed, the delivery of speed, and cut half, I give half back to the business, which is great. But that's only the half part. This is just efficiency. Now efficient with resources. But I can make something very, very quick and absolutely useless. And I've done it a lot of times. So I tested that. So the problem with just focusing on the speed is that you tell your business that I can make this things very quick and you're going to have half of your time back. They're going to love it. But when the business is not moving the right direction, you're going to come back and say, oh, by the way, oh, we didn't talk about the effectiveness part. So how do you measure effectiveness? That's much harder to measure than efficiency because you then just cut in half and see how long it takes. This is when microlearning and playtesting comes in. And how often you should do this training sort of thing. Sheriff and Mayor Knockerville talked about. They learned they learned research, and so they know that spaced out targeted challenges, let's say a month through, would be much better than one sitting and going through all that. So all day ready, bring a town hall. Smarty pants raise their hands as like, hey, we have a problem. This is going to be really boring. We need to spice it up, and we should gamify this whole thing, and it would be fun. And so they discussed this that maybe not go all the way there to pull this whole thing in a game. But if we use the spaced out targeted challenges with some game element that actually support the learning, that it would be fun. So here's what they come up with. The bank teller is going to get an email and say, hey, here's your challenge for this week. You go into this challenge and they do what normally do on the job, get some description about the scenario. They go find the right policy. They bring back the policy ID and they tell why the policy ID is correct and what would be the action. And then they submit it. That's the boring part. But what they decide on it, that it's actually a streak, gut streak sort of game. And so what they don't know, these tellers, is that two people are doing this at the same time and they're paired. And once both of them submit their answers, they're going to be connected through the system and say, hey, guys, you had and you had teller A and teller B. You both had some answers. Now go connect and talk about it. And so we got a little bit of a maybe social element going on here. They offline talk about it. If they disagree, they can reach out to and buy some microlearning. So this is where the microlearning comes in. We don't put them out before they they need that because they would reject it. We don't wait until they make a mistake because that would be too late. It is continuously every week they're getting, but only they get to the microlearning when they need it. Now it's still optional. They have to buy it. And then if they submit something that's not correct, then they lose their streak. And then they have to go through the microlearning. So this is a great plan. They run the plan. Next door neighbor, the store owner comes in and is like, this is excellent. I have a store. It's full of XAPI statements. We need that because this is the only way to track things outside of SCORM. Before you jump into any wild west technology, if you lead with technology, you always end up with the misery. I'll tell you that, because before you jump to any conclusion and start shelling out quick money from your account, make sure that you know what you're solving for one, and two is that you can prototype it and see and show that it is working. Obviously, next door thought leader who owns the local Airbnb and says, oh, I love this thing because we can prototype it with all the bells and whistles we have. Obviously, it's good for the house because it has bells and whistles. So now we have a plan. Let's bring in all this technology and bells and whistles and all that. The question is this the right approach? Now, here's my answer. If you do have the ability to bring in technology, at least think about it as an open ecosystem rather than I'm going to buy this giant one thing and it's going to solve my problems. And those open ecosystems have components that you need. And I'll show you what those needs are. And if you don't have that high tech and you don't have XAPI and stores and all that, then I'm going to show you a lower tech version of what you can do. So here's the high-tech version. I'm actually working on this. So this is present. It's not some magical future thing. It's not a Gideon thing that here's an elephant. And then I'm going to pause and pretend. So here's are the components that I think you will need if you want to run this sort of experiment. You need a store, the LRS store. That's when where statements are stored. We use Learning Locker for that. That basically, if you don't know what XAPI is, it basically is a place to store information around who did what, where, what was the result, when it happened, instead of just XYZ completed a course. We need some sort of a journey tracking because it's going to be over time completed, and that is Learning Locker. We need some sort of an LXP or LMS where all these things are, or just some sort of a placement to launch them, and that's Stream. We need some sort of integration, and XAPI is a good kind of language underlying technology that we can use for that. But the most important thing to run anything game-like is that you need some logic to run this. And in this Stream, which is a learning pool product, I'm not selling it. I'm just saying that that's one of the ways to do that. They have something called Waves, which you can see in a got streak. And Waves is something like a no-code sort of logic builder. But the magic about this is that there's no elephants here, but the magic is that it actually can trigger anything based on your statements. So you can see something here like I can wait for a statement, somebody sign up. I can take and pick some random scenario, assign it to this player, send it out, wait, let's say a day or two that I'm supposed to. Then I check on them. Hey, have you sent the answer? Do you need more information or not? Are you still playing? And so you build out this whole thing as a logical flow. And then all this tracked in Learning Locker. And the sixth element is data analysis, which is insights in their component. And what it does is it simply assess everything that's happening. So you can see the pattern, jump in, and before they make these mistakes, you can go and act on it. So that's the high-tech version of the example. What's a low-tech version? So thank God we have Smarty Pants again, who actually owns the hotel, the 24-hour hotel also, besides being a fugitive. And he says, hey, if you want something dirty, like pen and paper, there's another way to do that. And so the way to do that is, and I've done and tried and work well, is Smartsheet. I don't know if you know Smartsheet. How many of you are working with Smartsheet? Anybody who's using Smartsheet for anything? So Smartsheet is like an Excel on steroids online sort of thing, because if you look at the six components, in the lower key, they have all the elements. So there's no LMS store here, but it has the data, and like you can use it as a spreadsheet, keeping the data in. There is no personas here, but we can track the journeys through elements and rows. There is no LXP, but you can use your own LXP to launch things. Integration, communication could be forms. So what I did was I added forms to these, and depending on where in the stage people need to use these forms, it sends out the email, you click on it, it brings the form, and you answer questions, and everything is running on its own. There's no manual sort of exercise yet. You're just watching this experiment going. The game flow manager, and it was a part of a Learning Locker, and an excellent way of doing that with XAPI. Here, it has automation. So you can actually build an automation that has the same concept of waiting for things to happen in those rows, send out information, request information, compare. It has formulas in it, and it runs like a game engine, collecting information. And then you can do data analysis after that. So this is what it looks like as part of the experiment. Is there's Smartsheet, here's the automation. So basically it waits for example, two players to answer question each. And when the two rows are all connected and kind of tricks automatically, the trigger starts. And then it sends out the email to these people like, hey, you two are together. Go and connect, use Chime or whatever you want, and talk to each other, and then come back and finalize your answer. And you see there's player one final answer. So you can time things here. You can send emails, nudges with logic. If you already submitted, don't send the nudges. It's a simple way to run experiments. This is what I would get as an email. I click on the form. It brings up the form. And I mean, it's not pretty, but it's literally what I need for a prototype. and I answer questions. I type in the ID, compares the ID. Now I know whether they got the streak right or not. So this is something that collects data. It doesn't cost a fortune, but you can build some sort of an experiment in reality in today's world of how does it look like, tweak it, and then go and see what you can do in the future. And so the final place here is the bar. Bar manager looks all this like, yeah, it's like sounds like playtesting is fun. Let's give it a shot. No pun intended here. And then just a reminder of rethink the past. So sometimes asking the right questions around what we did, why we did it the way we did, that helps us to iterate and change in the present. Do small iterations, tweak, see what happens. So rather than writing a white paper, all this, just go do it and see what the data shows. And then so you can tweak the future rather than wait for some big bells and whistles, something come in and work all the way. And so I promised the joke, and here comes the joke at the end, since your people are still here, and I see emojis coming in. Okay, does anybody wants to hear the joke? Let's see the emojis. Looks like people want to hear the joke. All right, the joke. Past, the present, and the future walk into a bar. It was tense.